I was just doing art pieces to get my like creative juices back going. And I remember like one of the first art pieces that got me really going was my old skateboard. And I grabbed my skateboard off. I took my dad's like sander and I sanded it down to raw wood and I did like this really cool like tree on it. And then that kind of just got me doing more pieces again. And then believe it or not, what started like the business aspect of it, I was playing in a men's pickup game one day and this kid like went to go throw away a pair of Jordan 5s. And I was like, dude, you're going to throw those away? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, well, like, can I customize them for you?
Nice.
And then that spiraled into like a whole thing where I was like customizing and restoring sneakers for people. Like it got to the point where I was doing like a lot of boxers where like Nike would send me their boxing shoes before they like would go to a big fight and I'd customize them and stuff.
Hey, welcome to Let's Talk Shop with my man, the Can of Corn, aka Zack Acorn. See, I did it backwards this time.
I like it. I like that. I might have to switch it up.
But I was
myself.
practicing on that one last night.
That's good.
My man, the Can.
I like that. I like that. That's smooth. That's
So
real
we're gonna have a
smooth.
good time today. We just got off a long half of a tour. You did about 25%, 30%, 40% of the tour.
5 stops. So,
Five out of 14 stops.
Yeah,
so that's
so close to
30,
half.
30-ish percent
Yeah.
of the 730 tour where we were printing in the parking lots with a rock press.
Yeah.
So you got some sleep last night?
Finally, yeah. It was awesome. It was amazing to sleep. Yeah. I'm definitely feeling it.
Still need coffee today.
Yeah, definitely gonna need coffee today. You figure, and especially in the past week, coming from doing a training and an install and all that stuff, built the press 5 times, broke the press down 5 times.
And last night
Yeah.
there was a record.
Yeah.
2 records. 1 record, maybe. 1. Because you've set the press up faster with Corey before.
Yeah, I think it'd be tough to beat me and Corey together with Bill. We really work in sync
But
together.
the breakdown was what?
Yeah. The breakdown.
$1.50 or something.
Yeah, it was pretty fast.
Yeah,
I mean, I had an
We had
advantage.
Brandon's help.
Yeah, I had Brandon, I had
crushed
you.
it.
I had an advantage of, breaking it down so many times. I kind of watched where people got slow and then just did my thing.
Yeah, it was
So,
impressive.
it was
That's
nice.
That's for sure.
yeah.
So what I wanted to talk about today, I thought would be cool, is like we were walking through the warehouse, kind of putting the food away last night, and you're like, "Oh, I remember seeing a video like the old Ryonet. It's like
Yeah.
one day I'm going to be in that warehouse."
Yeah.
So I'd like to hear a little bit about like your story, like when in your story you watched that video,
Yeah.
and then how you got to today.
Okay. Sounds good. Yeah, I mean, so obviously, go by the Can of Corn now, and that started as like my artist name, but it started honestly with like just growing up with a passion for love of art and whatnot. So I got really obsessed with Andy Warhol at a super young age. And
What young age?
I would say probably by like 10 years old. And
10 years old, you were an artist. So did you all like doodle when you were in?
Oh yeah, I love doodling. I remember like once they showed us how to make faces in school, I would just try to do faces, but like I really wasn't.
That was your go-to, your face?
Not even in that, to be honestly. Like what I realized my go-to was actually like logos. I remember like on Friday nights, I like moved away from like all my friends when I was younger. We moved to a different town, so I remember like Friday and Saturday nights, I would spend like a lot of time like redrawing NBA logos. And,
Oh, NBA logos.
Yeah, so I would do
basketball logos. What was your favorite? What logo were you the best at? Celtics logo is hard.
Celtics logo was super hard. I mean,
I used to draw the Blazers logo.
Yeah,
That's
Blazers
probably
logo
the
was
easiest
fun.
logo in the NBA.
Yeah, the Jazz logo was super easy,
yeah.
and I liked like how the way it looked. But yeah, I would just do the logos, and then I really liked Pokemon as a kid, so I would do the Pokemon characters too. But yeah, I would just redraw stuff, and then as I always took art classes, but as I got older, people would be like, you're never gonna make money being an artist, so you should really get into like architecture. So I started doing bigger push into architecture.
It's kind of the same. You're drawing.
Yeah, it's like more, I guess, like exact and whatnot.
Mhm.
But after like 2 years of architecture school, because I feel like I got fooled when I got there, they were like, yeah, if you thought you were gonna make a lot of money doing architecture, it's not the case. And I was like, okay. So I found myself doing a lot more working on my company, Self-Made Designs, and working on like clothing designs.
Oh, back up.
Yeah.
So what company? When was Self-Made Designs started?
Well, it didn't even start until after I dropped out of college. But in college, I knew
You
that.
said you found yourself working on your company.
Yeah.
That means it started at some point.
So I guess the idea of it started in high school. So I was by high school, I was already introduced and obsessed with Shepard. Like I thought what he was doing with Obey was super cool. And then I was always fascinated with Johnny Cupcakes being from Boston.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So.
Did you ever go down to his store?
Yeah. I brought Lucy recently. She got to see it. It was super cool. And then
when you were a kid, did you go down to the store? Like
so I went down to the original one out in Hull, which was like what really set him off. So it was actually super cool. I was amped to see the collaboration we just did with him.
Oh yeah.
So that was awesome.
That was awesome.
But yeah, so with the fascination with those two, I'd always like kind of had the idea that I wanted to get into like clothing and t-shirts specifically. But so when I was in school, I found myself trying to figure out what my company name was going to be, started to play around with different abbreviations, all that stuff. And then that's when I came up with like SMD, self-made designs. I thought it'd be funny. And then also I just really always liked self-made. Like it was just something that I clicked with me. So everything in life, my dad like taught me to be a really hard worker. And then like when I always felt like what defined me was anytime I got like put down or I failed at something, I just came back stronger. So that's when that mentality started to come, and I really wanted to, put it into a brand or my company. So I remember I still think I have some of the notebooks from my architecture classes where I'd be writing the name out, trying to figure out how it looked. And
this was in high school or college?
This was in college. Yeah. So by the sophomore year, I knew I didn't want to do architecture. Like I was gung-ho. I remember I got asked to go to do like a program in New York over the summer, and I told them I was good. And they were like, what do you mean? And I was like, honestly, if I even stay in school, I'm probably just going to use the degree as a design degree to apply to Nike and do like clothing for Nike.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So ended up dropping out though. And then,
So how long were you wait, back up, because I know a little bit about your your other passion of shooting ball. So at what point in time did you realize you weren't going to be in the NBA?
Probably I realized
Or is the dream still alive?
No. The dream is far dead. I knew by like probably I got my junior year in high school. I honestly had no intention of even trying to be on the team in college, but then I just missed it so much. I walked on and I was able to walk on the team.
Yeah.
But yeah, I knew it was very far-fetched, 6'2" white kid, barely could jump off the ground.
When did you have your growth spurt growing up?
I had my growth spurt probably going into my eighth grade and freshman year.
Yeah.
I got taller, and then I was super skinny for a while, and then I honestly didn't start putting like real muscle on until like freshman year of college. So
it changes your game, muscle does.
Yeah, actually, it was funny because I put on so much muscle after my freshman year of college that my coaches said that I needed to lose muscle because they were like, you look more of a football player than a basketball player.
Yeah.
So it changed a lot of things.
Hey, there's some jacked NBA players right now.
Oh, yeah. Super jacked. Yeah. But I would say the ideal body type is like more like slim cut than super diesel,
It's funny how like a passion changes, in life.
Oh, yeah.
Because you put so much into something, whether it's a sport or music or like I had my growth spurt super early. I was like this tall by end of sixth grade.
Mm-hmm.
So I was going to the NBA.
You
like
thought
6'2", sixth grade.
Yeah.
Dunking almost.
And it took you this long just to realize you belong down in the post. So,
yeah. No, I played the post. I got stuck down there. Now I have muscle again. But no, and then that transitioned to music, and then that transitioned into, music led to t-shirts.
Yeah.
So it's always interesting to hear somebody's shift in like the psychology of shifting your passion.
Yeah.
From one thing to another. So you got into art, and then now we're at like starting self-made design, doodling, and then dropping out of architecture school. So you said, how long did you go to college for?
Only 2 years. Yeah.
So do you actually have credits?
Yeah, they're probably floating around. I mean,
So do you have full 2 years of credits?
Yeah.
Here's something I found out, because I also went to college for almost 2 years.
Nice.
So if you ever have kids,
yeah, you can pass those credits on.
No, you cannot pass your
pretty
credits
cool.
on.
That would be pretty cool.
You can actually, if you have 52 college credits, which is like a year in like 6 months, you can homeschool your kids.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Otherwise you can't homeschool unless you have the college
cool.
credits.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's good to know. I would love to homeschool my kids.
No, you don't.
Oh, okay, maybe I won't.
I would not recommend it.
Oh, maybe I could hire somebody to homeschool the kids.
But if you ever need to, if there's an ever COVID point two, and you need to homeschool your kids, you actually can. That's why I found
No,
out.
yeah,
So.
but I do agree. I mean, I attest a lot of where I'm at now, especially with my art and screen printing career specifically, like to my surroundings and going through the whole basketball thing. Like the work ethic specifically,
Hmm.
and a lot of my failures in basketball, I attribute to my success in my screen printing and art career because I just remember like reflecting back on the whole basketball stuff and remembering all the things I didn't do that I needed to do.
Oh yeah.
And so like thinking about those things now, it's like, all right, I'm gonna do those things like regardless because I don't want to ever be older and look back and be like, oh well, you didn't do it again for this either. So I test that a lot, but no, I think that's like a big part of life is just understanding that like the things that you're going through, your passion's always gonna find you if you're open to let it find you. But the other things that you get exposed to are just attributes to like what's gonna really help with your passion. Like I said, like the basketball helped with a lot of drive and understanding how to put the work in and stuff like that. And then like even my upbringing, like with my dad, like my dad was very hard worker, but like also super big into like mechanical and fixing cars, and like that helps me a lot
Oh
with
yeah,
with some of the things I do now. So
for sure.
it
Wrenching
all
on presses.
yeah, it all comes together. So it's
So
big.
you mentioned work ethic coming out of like your basketball and like coaches and things of that nature.
Yeah.
What were your takeaways that you were taking with you from life into life
Yeah.
in college? Are there any things that you took out of that college experience that you still take with you today?
Yeah, I mean, I would say the biggest thing I took out of the college experience, like honestly, was a cumulative of the whole experience, but it's really what you make it. I feel like college can be an amazing tool for somebody, but it only if you really know what you're trying to do. And I think that applies directly to life in the sense life is
Hmm.
an amazing thing, but if you're just trying to get through it or like coast through it, it's not going to be as effective as if you're very specific and you know what you want to do. So I'd say the biggest thing I took out of college is just like, take control of what you want to do and get after it and apply yourself. There's no need to coast through it.
So life lesson, no class lessons out of college.
I mean, class lessons, it was tough. I mean, I went
You were
to,
doodling in your book.
I was doodling. I mean,
You were coming up with
yeah, I went to a really good high school. Like I test a lot of the stuff that like I learned in high school because like my big belief that as I got older was school is really intended for you to learn how to learn so that when you get out of school, you're still applying those learning skills to help you grow and get better. And I was very fortunate that the high school I went to, Zavarian Brothers in Massachusetts, was like it really prepared me a lot for college. Where when in a lot of the classes, I think why I lost interest the most was because I had already learned that stuff in high school. So
hmm,
I was very fortunate with going to that school. So
nice.
yeah,
And so self-made designs started, you dropped out,
yeah.
and what happened after you dropped out?
Oh man, so I had like the craziest like year after dropping out. I didn't know what I was gonna do with my life. My mom was telling me I needed to go back to college. I still had hoop dreams where it's like, oh, maybe I'll go overseas, not the
Mm.
NBA, but maybe I could go make it overseas. And then I started getting a job as a barback. And this was like, believe it or not, the job as a barback like set my trajectory in the sense that there's one guy that came in one day and he's like, dude, I've seen you here for like a couple months now. And every time I come in here, you're always making sure that the bottles are facing out so the label can be read. He's like, what is that? And I was like, oh, yeah, some would say that's like a mental disorder, but I would say my dad just like instilled that into me. And he's like, well, those are great skills. Like, have you ever thought about working at a bank? And I was laughed
Mm.
and I was like, no. And I was like, he's like, but if you ever do, like, let me know. I'll get you an interview. And I was like, all right, I'm letting you know. And he's like, really? And I was like, yeah. So a week later, I showed up in downtown Boston in the financial district with like a suit that was way too big for me. Had
I
no
can
idea.
imagine that.
Yeah, had no idea what I was.
Where did you get the big suit from?
It was probably it was actually mine, but like I was way bigger, like I was saying at the time,
Oh,
and I
okay.
lost weight, and so it was way too big. It looked sloppy on me, and I didn't even know what I was going to interview for. So I walk in, and they sit me down in this big office, and they asked me, they're like, "Yeah, what do you know about mortgages?" And I just started laughing, and they were like looking at me like, "What the heck is wrong with this kid?" And I was like, "Well, my parents have one at least," and they just started dying laughing, and I was like, "Look, like." Before we get into this, like, just know I'm a blank canvas. Like, whatever and however you teach me, I'm only gonna know how to do it that way. So,
What year was this, by the way?
oh, that was 2012, 2013.
Okay.
Yeah,
So this is coming out of the the recession where the mortgage things all crashed and the housing market went to crap, and
Yeah,
you're coming out of
it
it.
was nice.
They're looking to rebuild the team.
Yeah, and it was really nice. Like interest rates were extremely low,
Yeah.
especially compared to now. So I was very fortunate where I got the job immediately that day. I was a sales assistant for the whole office, which was really cool. And then within the first 6 months, I got promoted to be a mortgage loan coordinator, and I got picked up by the highest producer at that time. So basically, my job went from being assistant to now is coordinating all the loans for this person. So basically, they would go out, get the sale, they'd send it to me, and then I'd work with the clients to make sure we get all the proper paperwork and do that. And then from there,
So that's like Jen's job.
yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Now that's a good like, comparison. But
Jen's the rock coordinator.
yeah,
on
she
Rock
does that.
helps
Yeah. So
make sure everything's checked off before the install is
yeah,
done.
and then she'll send me it to close it. But anyway, so was doing that, and then I got promoted again, and they asked me to be a full-time loan officer, which was cool. So that's where I attribute a lot of my business or initial business learning was from there. But it was interesting because at the time when I signed this, and hopefully this doesn't come back and kick me butt, but when I signed it, you sign like a intellectual property contract with the bank. And basically, because you're a salesperson, you're required to get approval from them to get a second job, or if you want to start your own company or something like that. And I didn't want to go through that. So within my first year, after I used my sales bonus, which was enough to pay off a good old Sally Mae, so I had no more loans, anything like that. I started working on my company like every night. And I did that for like 5 years while working at Bank of America. So it was
So the dream never died after that. You got a job, but you were always doing it on the side in the background.
yeah, like I said,
What
like
were you doing? Like, what was the
it
company?
started originally like I was just doing art pieces to get my like creative juices back going. And I remember like one of the first art pieces that got me really going was my old skateboard. And I grabbed my skateboard off. I took my dad's like sander and I sanded it down to raw wood, and I did like this really cool like tree on it. And then that kind of just got me doing more pieces again. And then believe it or not, what started like the business aspect of it, I was playing in a men's pickup game one day, and this kid like went to go throw away a pair of Jordan 5s, and I was like, dude, you're gonna throw those away? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, well, like, can I customize them for you?
Nice.
And then that spiraled into like a whole thing where I was like customizing and restoring sneakers for people. Like it got to the point where I was doing like a lot of boxers, or like Nike would send me their boxing shoes before they like would go to a big fight, and I'd customize them and stuff. So
Wow.
it was
What
really
was the first piece of art or shirt, whatever? What was it that you sold? How much did it sell for?
the first pair of sneakers that I sold for that I customized. I remember I sold them for 250.
250. Was that the first piece of art you sold?
No, the first piece of art I probably sold was it was a skateboard, and I sold that one. That was $150, and it was really cool. It was like I remember I painted the skateboard all white, and it was a silhouette of a guy playing the piano, but then the piano keys like exploded off and was like a spiral and getting bigger towards the end of the skateboard.
Nice.
Yeah, so it was really cool. I always struggled. I still to this day struggle with my pricing because I would honestly just give up the art away for free because I just love to do it. So
Yeah.
I find it funny thinking back on some of those pieces. Yeah.
So you were doing sneakers. What was your foray into t-shirts?
So like I said, I was always thinking about the clothing, and at the time, like I also like always wanted to have like a brand and a team. Like it was something that I grew up watching in like different eras where there was like Shepard. I would mention earlier, like there was a documentary I watched where like he had a team of artists and they went overseas, they did stuff in America. And then at the time too, at this time I had watched like one of my favorite movies and documentaries, which is Exit Through the Gift Shop by Mr. Brainwash and Banksy. And
Where's
like
that?
it's crazy. And so that really got me focused on like, all right, like if you want to go far, you kind of need to have like a team. And like that's why I've always been saying since I was young, like teamwork makes the dream work. And so I had already started putting artists together. Like a lot of them at the time were music artists, and so but we knew we wanted to have some sort of brand. And then I remember before I got into actually printing my own shirts, I got an order from Custom Ink. And I remember I did not like it at all, which was really funny.
So what was the brand?
Self-made.
Self-made.
Yeah.
And then your first order, you decided to order from Custom Ink.
Yeah, I just found them online. I remember the logo at the time was super basic. It was like a barcode where they looked like SMD was spray painted and dripping over it,
Oh,
like
nice.
all that stuff. And yeah, so I put the order through Custom Ink, which is funny because I remember Rock ended up having me help sell presses to Custom Ink down the road like
Yeah.
a couple of years ago. So it was funny. But anyways, I did it and I didn't like it. And then at the time, I had already been doing graffiti, and that's where like the can of corn came from, where I was writing corn because my last name.
Was that logo already developed at that time?
So yeah, this was actually this logo and this logo were developed like probably by 2013, 14 at the latest, because I was really getting sick of, being rushed and spray painting. And then I had really got into Banksy and learned that he had done stencils. So I came up with this logo, and like super influenced by Johnny Cupcakes too, if you look at it.
Yeah.
And it's like one of those things where I started just doing hand cut stencils and my hands were starting to kill me from doing that. So I ended up going to buy like a Cricut cutter, and that's how I would make my stencils. And like I would just
Was it a Cricut?
Yeah, it was just an old circuit Cricut or whatever those are.
Really?
Yeah, and I got one of those, and then it was funny because I remember I was like, all right, I got to figure this shirt thing out. And then sure enough, the first video I saw was you. And I was like,
okay. You Googled how to make a t-shirt?
Yeah, screen printing. Yeah, and then like you were the first.
Why not vinyl? Why you had a Cricut? Why not just throw some vinyl on it?
I just never liked the vinyl, like even at a young age, because I remember like when we got vinyl in like basketball and stuff. And it's funny because like I always make the joke now. I'm like, I really think I just love basketball and playing in all the tournaments for the free t-shirt. Not really the tournament, but I remember I hated how like the vinyl numbers used to fall off the shirts and stuff. So I was
like lay out on a ball and
you get stuck like no. So I was like, I'm gonna try the screen printing. So yeah, I saw yours first, and then the second one I saw was actually Cat Spit. And so after seeing yours and then seeing his, I was like, I can figure this out. So I had already had the stencils, so I was like, okay, essentially I can use these stencils to screen print through. So I got to figure this out.
So you did the pigtails situation where you put the stencil.
Oh yeah, like that was the first thing I ever did, like back in 2013.
Nice.
But I wasn't doing like the way I did it was I had them cut. I would make my stencils out of cardstock, and so basically what I would do is I saw like
you would just glue it, like the ink itself.
I wouldn't even glue it. This is how
it would stick to it.
It would stick because this is how I would get my placement. So the first time I ever did it, I remember I called two of my friends down. I was like, that were part of the team at the time. We had like a little super tiny garage studio at the time we were renting. And I was like, guys, I need you to come hold this screen down for me. And like, I had already had a heat press because I tried the heat pressing vinyl and I hated it too. And so I was like, guys, like I have an idea like of how we're going to do this. I ran out, bought like a speedball screen and stuff like that. And I cut out a stencil, and I remember I kept going back and forth because I didn't want to do the can of corn first because I was like, I want something that's going to apply to the community. So I was bouncing back and forth between support your local artists or support local artists. And I came up with the support local artist one, which ended up being like a big movement we did in Boston with stickers and all that stuff. And I basically had them come down and just hold the screen down. But the way I did it was like after watching those videos, I realized like I don't even have to put it on the screen. Like I can put it exactly on the shirt where I want it to go. And then I did that, flooded it, put it down. It obviously stuck, and then we pushed it through.
And then what happened to shirt number 2?
Shirt number 2 was fine because the stencil was already stuck from the plastisol. Yeah, so it was insane. And like I remember it looked so bad, but I was so proud of it. And like I remember I still have the first one. It hangs in my parents' house, and I have the first one, and I wore it to a Celtics game the next day. And it was so funny because
that's cool that you have your first shirt.
Oh yeah,
that is. Yeah, I wish I have a picture of mine. It used to be hanging out at Ryonet somewhere, and somebody stole it.
Oh man,
or threw it away. Probably threw it away.
Yeah, probably threw it away. Either or.
But what's this rag right here?
So it's so funny, and like it looked horrible, but I remember the next day I wore it to a Celtics game, and I got a couple compliments on it, and I was like, "This is it." And then I started thinking about it more. I remember even like when I first started doing it, I really started to look at it as like this is the best way for an artist to get their work out, because every person that's walking by me, I used to think when I was walking to work, is like a walking billboard.
Yeah.
So like if you can get your art on somebody's shirt, like you're basically getting advertised all the time. So I started getting into that, and then I remember like a week later, I went down to like the local art screen printing place that we had that I'm not even sure if they're still in business anymore. And I bought like this really old, I don't even know the brand, like 4-color, no micros or anything. And the guy was like, "You're gonna need a flash unit." And I was like, okay. So we did that.
And you knew what a flash unit was at the time?
No, he explained it to me. Yeah, he definitely explained it. I didn't pick up like understand it through the videos or anything. I was like, I guess it just puts heat out. But yeah, I remember I started working on that, and then cool thing was the first time I ever got actual screens made, because I knew that cardstock thing wasn't going to work. So I looked online, and the first people that ever made my screens was actually Strange Planet.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so they made my support.
Did they sell it like a service
Yeah.
to make screens?
Yeah, they sold it as a service, which was
That's
cool,
cool.
because I thought it was really cool they did that. And that
Were
was
they
something,
teaching classes at the time?
I think they were, maybe, because I know they were working with you at the time
Yeah.
when I first did that.
Did they? They only taught a few of the classes if they did.
Yeah, because that was when Justin was there, and so he was awesome. Like, I remember going into their shop, he gave me a full tour and basically told me like what I would need to do to grow in it, which was really
Did they have
awesome.
a rock?
Yeah, they had the rock
they had the
then.
rock.
Yeah, so it was really cool.
Yeah.
And but me not knowing, like, all right, this is gonna be a big part of my life, and like
Yeah.
that was the funny thing. I feel like when I first got introduced to screen printing heavily and stuff like that, besides knowing like the Andy Warhol thing, I was always trying to get back to spray painting, and I'd be like, oh, we need some money for the studio or whatever, because we had ended up moving into a bigger studio. I was like, oh, we need some money for the studio or for whatever. Like, let me screen print some shirts.
I've never seen you spray paint.
Yeah.
I was looking at Austin spray paint yesterday.
Yeah.
And it's like an art. Like,
Yeah.
I'd be like, and just. There's a picture of Dom. Like, Dom just did a video of Superior Ink. Did a video of like when your client wants it cheaper.
Yeah.
And it was like this pizza store with this like simulated process print, and then he just took a spray can, like drew a pizza. I'm like, that's how I would spray paint.
Oh yeah.
But like the hand movement and everything when you're spray painting, I want to see you spray paint.
Oh yeah, man. It's skill.
Crazy.
Yeah,
like,
it's
and
a
then
skill. Can control, we call it. Yeah.
Can control.
Yeah. So it took me a while. Like, I mean, I was very fortunate enough where I got connected with like all the top spray painters in Boston, like and spray paint artists. And
did you
like,
tag shit too? Like,
yeah, I tagged shit until I really started the business. And the reason for that was because like I looked at it as like, all right, well, I can either tag something and it get buffed out. Plus, I also learned that like the people that get screwed the most when that happens is the business owner. If you're tagging on a business. And then I realized, I was like, well, what's cooler than tagging is owning a business where your sign is actually lit up or advertised all the time, and that's you know. So that was what I kind of started working more towards, and then like I eventually just got obsessed with screen printing, like dove down the rabbit hole and was like, I want to do everything. I remember I maxed out like my only credit card at the time to buy like my first Riley Hopkins press and all that stuff. But yeah, it was a growing period. When we first started, I just remember like,
what year was this when you got obsessed?
I would say it was like 2015, 2016 was when I was officially obsessed. Because like before we knew nothing, like even when we were doing shirts, because we started printing live, that was our first thing. Like we were more so printing live than we were in the shop or studio.
And you're printing your own stuff.
Yeah, like support local artists or stuff like that. And it was funny because we didn't know what we were doing, so we used to say it's once it's smoking, it's cured. Like,
which is true. It's a good way to.
Yeah, but ours were like glossy.
There's a specific smell. You were printing with plastisol.
Yeah, super like, specific smell.
Mav, like this guy, one of my mentors, he taught me the plastisol smell. Like there's a specific smell. You smell it, and it's good.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah, so we didn't know any better. Yeah, we didn't know any better. And like the funny thing too is like our prints back then were super thick, and like now it's like a thing. And like now I love puff printing, and like it's funny how it all correlates. But
you didn't mean them to be thick. They just were crappy.
No, not at all. I remember
ours were too.
Yeah, what really I would say the defining moment where I really like fell in love with it. I got this job, and it was a 4-color. And like I said, I only had the single station 4-color, and I got a job for 500 shirts, 4-color prints. And I had to do it in like 3 days. And I remember we pulled a couch next to the press, and I literally would just.
And you fell in love with it through that grind.
Yeah. Because I was like.
Most people would be like, I'm done with this.
No, I just looked at it. I was like, holy crap. Like, this is going back to what I was saying earlier about like learning life and stuff, and what I learned from college. I was like, this is like. Yeah, work ethic, but it's also really what you make of it. Like I was like, all right, if I can do this, make this amount of money, and do this on my own time, and like this is it, like I can make this way bigger. And then that's when I like maxed everything. I was like, all right, I'm gonna get like a 4x6.
And were you still working at the mortgage thing at the time?
At that time, yes, I still was. So it was really interesting because like I was growing my hair out super long, so I had that going on, which I didn't have when I first got the job. So they weren't fans of that. They kept trying to get me to cut my hair.
They probably like the cornrows though, right?
No, I never wore the cornrows into the mortgage industry. That would be immediately suicide. But No, it was funny because I knew it was getting to a point where I had to like call it quits with a mortgage when I was at a point in that career, and then a point with my self-made and everything where it was like one needs my full attention
All right.
otherwise to get to the next level. And it was funny because I was getting talked to a lot because I'd be showing up with like plastisol in my nails,
Yeah.
and they're like, this is not a good look. Like,
This
yeah,
kid's having some issues.
yeah, yeah,
Might be on some stuff.
yeah. I was.
But okay, I love this question because I remember my answer to this question, but every answer is different. So how did you quit your job? What'd you say?
Oh, it was so funny. I remember I called out sick the day before, party reasons. And then I remember waking that night, actually, I remember making like a pros and cons list of like, I was sitting in a pizza shop like across the street from the studio, and I made a pros and cons list. And like, I wrote like all these like cons of like quitting the job where it was like health insurance, money, like blah, blah, blah. And then it was just like, um, on the other side, and I still have this in my house, like it sits like on my
Really?
dresser, yeah. And then it's just like a regular piece of paper written in, and then it says like love and passion, and then like freedom, and then like that was it. That's all I needed, because I remember every day I was like taking the train, and it would take like an hour to get to work with the
Yeah.
train and stuff. That I remember I kept telling myself like all I really want to do in life is just wake up every day and create. And like so I did that, and I was like, all right, I'm going to do it. I remember my parents calling me, trying to talk me out of it, because they were like, you have this awesome career set up for
Oh,
yourself,
yeah.
like all this stuff.
Working at the
You're making a
bank.
ton of money at your age, like doing crazy things. I was like, yeah, I'm still going to do it. And then, so I walked in that day, and like when you're selling mortgages, it's not like you give your 2 weeks. Like they're like, all right, we need all this private information
yeah.
back immediately. So I walked in there, and I was like, yeah, I had a first meeting with one of my supervisors, and that was a really intense meeting because I was honestly thinking about it the other night, and I almost cried thinking about it because he cried in the meeting. And it was funny because he was really good role model and stuff. And he was like, so what are some of the reasons you want to leave? And I was telling him, I was like, honestly, dude, like the big reason is I don't want to be like you. And I was like, you have a beautiful family that you never get to see.
Mm.
And like that was hard for me. So like I told him that, and he got up immediately after I said that, gave me a huge hug, and he's like, you got this. And then after that, I went to
Wow.
the other big office downtown, and I walked in to see the guy, and he's like, are you serious? Like, you're going to quit? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, what the heck are you going to do? And I was like, I'm going to be an artist, man. And he was like, what? And I was like, yeah, I'm going to be an artist. And it was funny because he didn't know anything that I had already built. Like at that point, my studio was already at like 5,000 square feet.
Wow.
Like we had like a full team, I think of like 16 people under the team, and like the team eventually grew to like 32. And the crazy thing about that team was it was like none of us were getting paid. It was all about like the mission of and the movement of what we were trying to do. But yeah, I ended up quitting, and then that's when the real work started to begin. Like, and I had to start learning the business of screen printing. That's when I think at that point I had already watched like all the videos you released at that point, and then I started watching all like the Printavo or Bruce's videos or that they had out on that point later, and I was just like got obsessed.
Yeah, I like that you kept your day job for
Yeah.
like 5 years
Yeah.
into the business, into learning it, and that's something that Damon John of Fubu
Yeah.
said that he did a really good section of a book and podcast with Guy Raz,
Mhm.
like don't quit your day job. And when I'm talking to new business owners, new screen printers,
Yeah.
and they have a good day job, that's what I recommend, because it's like it actually allows you to build your business like it should be built,
Yeah.
versus like you doing every single part of your business.
Oh yeah.
So if you have that day job that you have a salary, you have benefits, and you can build this business, you can hire people, you can give them responsibilities that they have to do when you're not there, it really is the best way to
Oh, 100%.
build a business.
I don't personally believe in regrets at this point in life because, like I said earlier, like I feel like it's all a build up in like one story. But yeah, I would even attest and say I left too early, and
Yeah.
that was after 5 years. Because when we had a thing with like,
Because then you became doing it
yeah, well,
yourself.
not only that, it was like when I had the team and stuff, like it forced me to have to do it all. And then, but the other thing too is with the team is like we used to have a Monday night meeting where the whole team would come, and I'd basically just give a TED talk to them every Monday. And it was funny because I used to always tell them, and the saying I would say is your day job supports your night job until your night job becomes your dream job. And then guess what? You start it all over again.
Uh-huh.
And I had gotten away from my own saying where I was just like, all right, well, there's no day job and night job, which was the perfect balance. It was like, it's an all the time job.
Yeah.
And it's like, holy crap. And I think you're absolutely correct. And like, I went through that where it's like, you don't have that separation. So what ends up happening is like, not only do you get overconsumed by the full everything, but you also start to lose yourself as a person because you don't have that separation that allows you to get out of it, you know? So, I make the joke now, it's like, now I have a bunch of J jobs, but my night job's still self-made, you know?
Yeah.
And it's crazy. Once I switched to that mentality back to that, I've seen way more growth in organization
That's
with
cool.
everything. Yeah.
Yeah. I was talking to, there's a guy renting a spot. He's a local business. His name's Adam Funderburg, and he runs Brainless Teas, but he's kind of transitioning out of that and doing some coaching and stuff like that. So he's renting some spots from us here at Ryonet. So I see him in the building. You probably see him here. And it's like the only way we were talking about, he's like, yeah, you got to work. You know, you always hear that saying, you got to work on your business, not in your business. But I think the only way to really work on your business is not to be in your business. Like you can't be there every day, not to be at your business.
Yeah. Well, it's also dangerous to do that in my opinion. And like I learned this from you the most, which is like one of the biggest things I've learned from you is like, and I didn't see this at all when I was doing all that stuff, is like when you're doing it all and you're not getting that separation, you're kind of like in this mindset where you have to do it all and it has to be yours. And like I think that was one thing that like crippled my growth and my company's growth and stuff a lot, like especially once we started doing like the gym for artists, we got the store, like all that stuff. It was more so crippling than anything because like I was more so micromanaging and like nervous to pass things off versus like the big thing I've learned is like, you know, and going back to the teamwork thing, which is kind of funny, is like, you know, the more you can hand things off, the more you can put people in positions of leadership and stuff like that, the more you grow and the more your projects grow. So I think, you know, having that separation of day job, night job, you know, it almost forces you to have to do that, which is a good thing. So
absolutely. So it's 2016. How did things grow to 2019? Kind of like we met during COVID. And so kind of where were things at when COVID hit? I know it hit Boston pretty hard.
Yeah, it hit Boston super hard. It was kind of nuts. Like, so in 2018, I was in a position where I was, you know, becoming the art guy of Quincy specifically where our businesses were, but then Boston and stuff like that, the young guy. And, you know, in that year I had bought like a art education company, and going back to what I said earlier, like all this stuff just adds up. You know, I didn't know why I was buying an art education company. And like, so we bought that out.
What'd you buy it for?
It was basically, I just took over their debt and stuff like that. They were on the way out, and it was funny, I was just going to look at renting a room out of their building, and then I like saw everything and I was like, well, our team and stuff could make this way nicer, all this stuff. So we ended up just taking over all their debt, took over their lease, like fixed all that stuff, and then we just took it over. But it was cool. We ran like kids summer art camp, so we'd have like,
was that the gym for artists?
No, so we had the gym for artists at the same time, but this was the first time that I actually found myself having to manage multiple locations.
So you had your screen print shop or your studio.
Yeah.
You had the gym for artists.
Yeah, which was, they were one location at the time. And
that was 5,000 square feet, you said? Or?
So by that year, we had already grown to 10,000 square feet. So
10,000
basically.
And how many studio spots did you have?
So at that time, it was all open concept. The private studio concept actually didn't happen until COVID, because COVID actually helped everything, in my opinion. And so we took that art company over, we did that, and then it was the building that we were renting and stuff was on historic land, so we couldn't do much. So I ended up making the decision to move that in the gym for artists, which was good. We learned how effective it was having classes in the gym for artists and stuff like that, but it also ran us into a huge issue where we got a lot of attention from the city and stuff like that, and that was when I learned about zoning and about stuff like that. So we ended up having to stop like using the gym for artists as basically an assembly use space and whatnot. And so when we did that, it was like getting to the point right around COVID, and we had decided, okay, well, if we're going to do this, we should take this storefront over on the corner. So I took the storefront over, and because we really started to need separation between screen printing and the brand versus the gym for artists. It was kind of all getting mudded together and stuff. So we started to do that, and then right when we were getting the store ready and we had the gym for artists going more private and stuff, COVID hit us. Like literally, we opened the store in January, and then COVID smacked us in February, which was wild. So,
And then everything shut down over there.
yeah, everything shut down. But the cool thing was we were able to pivot. So we were able to like in the gym for artists, because we were shut down, we had this ability to build all these private studios. So at this point, we're at 15,000 square feet, and we built 15 private studios on top of all the open spaces where we had an open recording studio, open band rehearsal, open dance, spray painting walls. We had, I think it was 26 spray painting walls throughout the whole studio. And we had all this stuff where our concept was like, all right, if we have all the basics for you to start your journey, and like you either can come and start your artist journey with the studios, like the recording studio, dance, all that stuff, and just use the basics that we provided for you, or if you're really looking to start your own like thing, you could rent a private studio on a month-to-month basis. So we did that. We really started doing that during COVID, like with the private studios, and it took off. Like I had every studio rented out within less than 3 months, and we were just rocking that stuff. We would do private like bookings where you could do video shoots, recordings. You needed to use the space for something, practice, whatever. You could do all that stuff. So we had that, and then the store actually did really well. I think it prevented us from getting the store to a point where it was actual retail store, and it was more so it just gave us the ability to really work with a lot of screen printing and clothing brands, because during COVID, that was one thing I noticed where like clothing brands had more time to build their clothing brand.
Yeah.
So it was
a lot of it blew up.
Yeah.
It was
helpful for us with that. But then we had the separation of the gym for artists and whatnot. And then, but yeah, that was like right about the time we finally linked. I remember, I realized when we were still in the gym for artists, I really wanted to get noticed by Ryonet. Like Ryonet was Nike in screen printing, and all I could think about was like, all right, if I'm gonna do this, I might as well annoy the hell out of them. So I just started posting me screen printing every day and tagging Ryonet every day until they started reposting me. And then I remember when you reached out to me, I was like so nervous to open the message. I was like,
so I messaged you on Instagram?
Yeah, and I was like, I was nervous.
I was going to go back and look at that.
Yeah, you should. And so I think we maybe had like gone back and forth, but I remember you messaged me and I was like, holy crap, like what's he messaging me about? And sure enough, it was about working out. It had nothing to do with screen printing. And
what were you posting videos of working out or something like that?
Yeah, you were like, I see you work out a ton and stuff like that. And it was funny because I really started working out because of COVID. And I was like,
you started working out again?
Yeah, again.
Since basketball?
Yeah, I kind of just took a hiatus and was just living the art life, the poor artist life and stuff like that. You're really going to find it, aren't you? Yeah,
I'm going down
right now.
I'm almost there.
So anyways.
A lot of messages.
Yeah, so that happened. And you're like, yeah, let's do this challenge, the 2,000 calorie challenge, which was insane. And
so were you not working out at all at that point in time?
No, I was working out, but not like that. Come on, we were working out insanely. Like I remember Richard even made the joke one day.
Did you meet Richard Tilley before?
Through you. No, I met him through you. Yeah, through that.
And John Gibbs and all that.
Everybody, all of them was through that. Omar, everybody was all through that challenge.
Yeah, that was a good group.
We had a solid group. That was a legendary group. But I think maybe like Richard and I had like got introduced, but we weren't as close as we were when we got through the challenge.
So you didn't work out at all, like literally.
Up until COVID, yeah.
In COVID, you started working. What kind of got you back into working out a little bit?
I looked fat, bro. I don't like looking fat. My mom used to call me fat as a kid, so like I was just like, I can't be fat, man. So one day I just started running, could barely run a mile. And then and then next thing you know, like I'm running like crazy miles and doing all that stuff. I remember the second day of the challenge. I remember I ran 11 miles for the first time ever in my life, and my feet were busted. Like it's huge blisters, like all this stuff. It got to a point where I ran like 4 or 5, and that was like a lot. And then I was like, well, I've never ran this far. Like, why don't I just keep going? And like I just kept going, and it was a bad choice. But which led me to like, I'll never forget this because Cody was like probably my biggest support. Cody is one of my best friends, holds it down huge back home for me, and I remember he would always be like checking in on me to make sure I'm good on the challenge. Like he'd literally be chilling next to me while I'm on a bike.
Explain what the challenge was.
So you had to do 2,000 active calories, not just regular burn calories. Like actively working out calories and moving around every day for
Which
30
is
days
about
straight.
how long did that take you?
Every day?
Yeah,
Oh, at least like 2 hours
2 hours,
of
about
working
2
out.
hours.
Yeah.
Like if you worked out intensely, you could get it done in
Yeah,
like
and you had
maybe
to be intense.
an
Like,
hour 40.
yeah.
But
And I remember like within the first week, I was ready to give up. And I'll never forget.
that's the hardest days, like day 8 to
Yeah,
10.
I was
I
like
think.
dying one day, and it was insane because I was like, I didn't know if I was gonna make it through the day, and I told Cody, I was like, bro, I think I need to lay down. Like, I'm gonna go upstairs. And at this time, I also took over the apartments above the store, so I could literally just walk upstairs into my apartment. And I remember I go to lay down, and sure enough, it was the first time you ever called me. It was literally right when I laid down on the
Really?
bed. Yeah, I was about to take a nap, and you called me, and you're like, I remember like, holy crap, like I gotta answer this. And so I answered it, and you're like, hey man, how's the challenge going? And I'm like, oh yeah, it's going great, man. I'm actually getting ready to work out right now. I'm not like getting ready. And you had started asking me. I remember at the time you were asking me about like the gym for artists and stuff because you were interested. I think like Nate or somebody was trying to do something similar with the screen printing membership setup or whatever.
I remember that, yeah.
Yeah, so you had reached out, and it was funny because we talked for a good amount on the phone, and then immediately when I got off the phone, I like ran downstairs. I was like, bro, I got to work out. And he's like, what got into you? I was like, Brian Moore just called me, man. And it was like, okay, like I got to get after it. So
That was a great challenge.
yeah,
And it was cool to see, like, we got basically, I was trying to get 20 people.
no.
I think we got close to 20
Oh,
people.
Ross almost died.
And there 2 people went to the hospital.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ross and Dustin.
Yeah.
Both went to the hospital.
Yeah.
Because it is intense. It is, if you're really doing it.
Oh yeah.
I think that it was, but definitely the best shape and really good camaraderie, all virtually.
Well, also it really like made me realize how helpful it was for all my businesses and work I was doing because it made me have to get super organized more than I already was because it was like, dude, you have to dedicate like 2 hours a day to working out. So you're either going to get up super early and work out or work out super late or whatever the case is. And like, I think that was, you always made that joke. You're like, you're literally always waiting till midnight to hit 2,000 calories.
Yeah.
And I was like, it's just how it goes, man.
COVID was good in that aspect because I
Yeah.
stopped traveling, and then I remember Brandon and I would meet like every morning. We just had like a standing here at Ryonet to meet at, like, no one worked here, but we would meet at I think 5 or 5:30, and like literally like one every day, every other day he wouldn't show up. Like, I'm not coming to him, like, but it got me there. Like, I'm like, let's just keep the appointment because. I was typically a little bit late, but I would still get there and then work out. It was so good.
No, it was cool. I mean, that was one of the things that really kept me going too. Because at first, when COVID happened, I actually had to move back to my parents' house, so I didn't have the apartments yet. Because I was living in the studio and the warehouse, and then I was living in the store for a while, just sleeping on the couch. And I was like, when COVID happened, I was like, maybe it's not a good idea to just live on a couch while this pandemic's going on.
Yeah.
But I still would every day go to the studio, and I remember somebody called the cops on me because they were like, he's in there working, he shouldn't be, and I had to go get a letter from the city.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
because of COVID?
Essential and all that stuff. So it was interesting. Did you find it yet?
I found it. Yep.
Did I message you?
You
probably tagged you.
You tagged me in some kind of, I think you were like doing push-ups.
Yeah.
If I remember, like you would like get down and you do push-ups while you were printing.
Yeah, that's what it was. I would do the push-ups while I was printing because if you look back, which is super funny, when Rox started the whole stepping challenge we've been doing, I started sending this video around to like the people I'm really close with, and when we did the challenge, there's a goofy video Cody and I made on my Instagram, and Cody comes in the shop and he's like drinking a beer, and he's like, hey man, like, so you've been doing the challenge, any like changes you've noticed that we should make or whatever? And I was like, nah, man. I was like, I will say though, the press feels a lot smaller. And then like you pan over and it's me on one of those stepping machines while I'm screen printing. And I'm like, yeah, let's go, man. Like,
yeah, I remember those types of videos. So I think that's when I messaged you like, nice job. And then we started messaging back and forth. Yeah. That was on May 25th, 2020.
2020. So I was already there. I was already practicing on being the comedic relief for the industry. So but no, we did that, and then our reward for completing the challenge was another challenge. We decided you convinced me to do the 48-hour challenge.
That was rough.
That was crazy. So but no, the challengers are awesome, and like it was a test for like how bad do you want it, which I always liked, and then it like just transpired into everything else, and then like that led to like I said, I got really close with Richard. He's always,
So you started texting him back and forth?
oh, we texting talked like almost every day like that.
Yeah.
And it got to the point where we kind of just clicked, especially in the challenge. So like we'd be sending each other motivational videos, like all that stuff, all the David Goggins stuff. And Richie was always just straight up with me. He's like, dude, your energy and your vibe is like it's very rare. He's like, bro, you need to protect that. And he's like, I just want to be here to help you grow and put you in positions. And you were the same. So it was like with you two, it really just put me in a position where I just started going harder and pushing harder and like wanting to do more. And then it was funny because at the time, I remember having like the apartment, having my store underneath it. And like that was when I like officially got introduced to who's now my good friend, Lee Stewart. And I remember being like watching his videos. Cody, what does this guy have that I don't have? Like, I mean, I got all this stuff too. I was like, what the heck? And so having that,
he's obsessive about keeping it neat and clean. And
yeah,
like,
I'm a little different than that.
crystal
You can
white.
see the difference when you put us both next to each other. But no, Lee is like unbelievable. Like that was like truly a blessing. And I remember even going to Lee's. Like it was one of those things where it was just like a dream coming true. Like finally getting to meet somebody that you've like watched and all that stuff. But with having you two being supportive and pushing me, and then like obviously having, I always think it's really important to have some sort of competition. Like he's my friend now, but I always looked at it as I got to compete against this dude. Like he was always the top dog in my
Who's
opinion.
that?
Lee.
Oh,
So,
Lee, yeah.
So I was always like, all right, what's he
yeah.
up to? Like, all right, I got to do this. And like that was when I was still trying to find like what my thing was, when it came to the industry. And like now I think I'm really coming into it where I think I play a big role with like being a part of like the ecosystem of the industry and bringing people together and all that stuff. And like, he crushes it with what he does. But yeah, in the beginning, I always looked at him. I was like, oh, I have that little athletic competitive edge. So I guess I'm going after Lee, But yeah,
I had that with Catspit back in the day.
Oh, well,
He walked up to me at a trade show and he's like, I'm going to be more famous than you on YouTube. I was like, good luck, buddy.
Damn.
And then like walked away.
Damn.
And then we went back and forth for a while. And then like Ryonet ended up actually sponsoring him for a bit. And then he did his own thing. And now he sells screen printing supplies and doesn't make videos anymore.
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy how it can happen because like I said, like when I went and finally met Lee, I remember, and I recorded it on the glasses when we first met, like it did like everything like just felt overdue. And like I met him and I was like, holy crap, like I could be best friends with this guy. Like he's awesome. Like he's just another go-getter, and Lee gets after it more than like one of the top I've ever seen in my life. And you were there with like on one of the trips. And so it was really cool. So that started coming together, and then like all the pieces.
But you got into that side of the industry because you were a screen printer. When we met, you were a screen printer. You had two screen printing, like you had a screen printing business, a brand, and this gym for artists.
Yeah.
And then you showed up, like, how did you get into the more supply or like education side of the
I blame
industry?
Richard, obviously. I'm just going to blame the king. And so I blame Richard because Richard was already working as a tech at this point, and he had gone and he did the 12-ounce install. And so he got close with Alan. And basically at the time, Alan Alan was looking for like more production people, and Richard like threw my name into it. He was like, yo, you should shout out to this kid Zach and all that stuff. And so me and Alan started talking, and like we were going back and forth, and like Alan, I had heard about Alan because of the art industry and the art world. And so like to actually start talking to him was crazy. Like he's telling me how like the first time he ever screen printed was with Shepard, like in Shepard's studio. He went to RISD.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So far. So it's like I was like losing my mind like talking to him originally. And then I was like, part of me is always like, all right, if you want something to happen, you gotta make it happen. So I remember I'm talking to Alan one day and I'm like, hey dude, like does this week work for you? And he was like, what do you mean? I was like, I think I'm going to book a ticket, come out and see everything. He was like, yeah, if you're serious, like you can stay with me and everything. So I was like,
was that before the main lab class?
Well, that was the reason why I went to the main lab class, because at the time I was doing this thing after COVID where shops were really struggling in Massachusetts for operators. So Cody and I would actually like contract ourselves out as operators. So we would go in for a higher hourly rate and we would just run on all these presses. And I remember this one shop like had asked us, and they were like, yeah, can you come help? We have a rock. Have you ever worked on one? And I was like, yeah, definitely, man. Never had touched a rock in my life. And I was like, I'll figure it out though. And I remember same thing. I was like, when in doubt, let's watch some Ryan Moore videos. So I watched all the rock videos that you had. That was the first time I'd ever seen Buck in like two, and I watched all those. Sure enough, went in the next day and like crushed it on the rock, and I was like, this is an amazing press. Like
Yeah.
holy crap. And it was funny because when that had happened, I just got interviewed for the Blue Crew interviews. I just did an M&R interview.
Oh.
Yeah, so it was so.
Did you have a blue press?
No, I was working on them, so they saw me working on them and like my posts and
because
stuff.
you were doing like the contract for
contracting.
hire thing.
Yeah, so I was doing that, and it was funny because during the Blue Crew interview, and you can still find this online. I remember they go to start the interview, and they're like, "Are you gonna turn your camera on?" And I was like, "Are you sure you want me to do that?" And like, "Yeah, we need to see you." And I turned
because they were doing it remotely.
yeah, and I turned it on, and it was all green in my shop, and they're like, they're like, "What's going on?" And I'm like, "Yeah, man, I actually don't have a M&R press." And they're like, "Well, what'd you do with our flag we sent you then?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, it's actually the splash off of our dark room right now, so it's just collecting like emulsion and ink." And so we did that, and then but yeah, when I started talking to Alan, and I realized I was gonna go to Alan's place. It was two things were happening at the time. I remember COVID was dying, and I was like, I made this commitment to myself where I was like, you're gonna travel outside of the state once a month, because I had never traveled over those first like 8 years.
Wow.
And I was like, all right, I'm gonna start doing that. And then that was like, I had just done a recent interview with Adrienne when she was with Screen Printing Mag, and I'd basically told her how like it'd be a dream come true to like go to the Made Lab and eventually work with you guys or whatever the case is. And I was like, well, you had a learn to rock class coming up, and I was like, all right, if there's any opportunity for me to get better so I don't look like a complete newbie when I go out to Alan's shop, like it's go to this class. And then that was when I just booked the ticket, booked the flight, and then I called you, and you're like, don't worry about a place to stay, you can come stay with us. Because I remember originally when you had the class with Draplin, I was like, I hope I win this contest, and I didn't win. But so I went down to the Made Lab class for the first time, and I remember I showed up early. You weren't there yet, so my first introduction was with Brett, Brian, and Tom. And I remember I walked in, and I'm like, can I clean some screens or do some stuff, man? Like, can I work? And
I remember getting a call like, this kid Zach's here. He wants to clean screens. I was like, yeah, just put him to work. Like,
yeah, it was funny because I like first half of the day I just cleaned like a ton of screens, and I was loving it. I was like, this is the best screen cleaning setup I've ever been in my life. It's so awesome.
Lotus Holland.
Yeah, and then it was amazing. And then I remember the guys took me out to lunch. We went to Velvet Taco. I'll remember that, which was awesome. And I remember just listening to Brett talk. I was like, crap, like sitting next, like I'm in the car next to Screen Printing Jesus right now. Like, what the heck? Like, that's what we'd always call them. I was like, holy smokes. And then I remember he's talking about like the trips to Honduras, and I'm like, I'm not Honduras, Haiti at the time. And like, I'm like trying to sound cool. And at the time I was like, yeah, man, I know some stuff about Haiti. Like, you know, my girlfriend's family's from there or whatever at the time. I was like, he's like, yeah, cool, man. I'm like, oh, shoot, I just made a fool out of myself. I'm like, whatever. And then, so we get back, and I'm like, yeah, Brett, like, is there anything else I can do for you? And he's like, you want to coat screens? And I'm like, yeah, let's coat some screens. He's like, so I'm like stretching. He's like, no, dude, we have an auto coater. And I was like, okay.
So he used the auto coater for
the
first time?
So he comes up, he shows me for the first time, and he's just like sipping his drink. He's like, this is all you do, man. And he like watched me do it. He's like, all right, man, have fun. I'm going to go to my office. And he just went back to printed threads. And then I just had like a ball in there. And it was funny because that day, I remember Buck was there, but I was so nervous to like introduce myself to Buck. And he was working on the oval all day and stuff. And I was so nervous to introduce myself because I'm like, holy crap, that's the other guy from Rock. Like, what the heck? And I remember I was talking to Richard, and Richard was getting there later or whatever. And he was like, dude, Buck's there. Like, just go say what up to Buck. And I was like, all right. And he was like, just start yelling Buck's name up. And I was like, okay. I was like, yo, Buck. And then all of a sudden I hear, yeah, what's up, man? And I'm like, where is this dude? Like, where is Buck? And then I'm like walking on the top level, and then all of a sudden Buck just like pops out from the inside of the oval. He's like, hey, man, how's it going? And I'm like, oh, what's up, man? Like, I'm Zach. Richard told me to introduce myself. He's like, oh, cool, man. He's like, let me finish up in here and I'll come back, closes the door, goes and does the thing, and then comes out. And like, that was my buck introduction.
Oh man, that's awesome.
Yeah. So,
Well, at that point in time, did you want to be a rock tech or
no, I had
no?
no intention
Okay.
at all. I was just like I said, I knew at that time I wanted to, and I remember telling Alan this when I went there. I was like, dude, I want to be like one of the biggest screen printing artists of all time. Like I had told him the Andy Warhol story, and I was like, I want to be one of the biggest screen printing artists of all time. And so at that point, I had no intention at all. And like, it was funny because like the idea didn't even come across my plate until after I'd gone to Alan's, and because I had a blast at that class, met you, and I remember the first thing you said to me, you're like, holy crap, you're a lot taller in person. I was like, yeah, man, thanks. And so we had a great class, like all that stuff. And then I remember like one of the people came up to me in the class and thought I was part of your team and was like helping. And I was like, no, I'm just here, man, like whatever. And then I went to Allen's, had an amazing week, got to work with like John Sheridan, got to be and touch all that amazing equipment. And then Allen had a really good talk with me. And he was just like, yeah, man, like you probably shouldn't do this. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, well, one, you have all your stuff back home. And he goes, and two, he's like, if you come out here, like you're probably gonna get bored and you're gonna start something else. And I
That's
don't
good advice.
necessarily want that. He's like, the best advice I could give to you right now is like you just need to pay your dues, which is like
Yeah.
crazy because like I had already had one of these. I bought two of these hats, and underneath my brim it says dues paid. So it's kind of crazy that like he was talking about that. So
Wow.
I had gone back and like I had this new fire under me from him and like getting to go through all that and just having great conversations with Alan. And I got back and I remember like you guys had another Made Lab club coming up and I contacted you and you're like, yeah, like hell yeah, come out, whatever the case is. And that time I met Dolph and Nikki at the time was working for Rock and they basically had proposed the idea. They were like, you'll get to go into, cause like at the time I was just like so obsessed with learning. I was like, I want to learn. Like I remember I fell in love with Brian the first time I met him. It's like so much knowledge of printing, and Andy's from Massachusetts, all the best. But
Oh yeah.
anyways, so I was like, I just want to learn more. And then Dolph had like showed me how to do a flash, and he's like, oh, you picked that up pretty fast. And then he was like, made the joke, you ever thought about being a rock tech? And I was like, no. And then like Richard had talked to me more about it. He was like, dude, you get to go in all these shops.
Yeah.
Like, and you could learn a ton. And like at the time I had already started like coming up with the idea where I think this like contracting printers out would be big. So I was like, all right, well, this could be cool. I could ask shops like if they think that would work and I could get into all these shops. And then I remember they were like, yeah, we'll talk. Like on top of that, at the time, they were like, we do need more people that can do the teching side, but actually help with the implementation of like screen printing training and stuff. So I remember like, I was like, yeah, I mean, it would be cool or whatever. And then Buck called me like a couple weeks after that one. He was like, you think you really be interested? And I was like, I guess, man. And then like next thing I know, Mark called me and Mark was like, hey man, so I hear you're interested in coming on the tech team. He's like, do you have any technical or mechanical skills? And I'm like, well, I'm a professional flashlight holder. I'm certified by my dad. And he just laughed and he's like, okay, well, like we're gonna do this 2 week School of Rock thing, and like we're gonna have you come out for that. And so I was like, okay. And I literally had gone. I remember we had the first water-based camp I'd ever gone to was the week before School of Rock. So
Yeah,
I went
remember that.
Yeah, I went water-based camp and then 2 weeks in Florida, which was like 3 weeks away from home. So at the time, that was the longest. And I was like, yeah, I'll never be this long away from home ever again in my life. Who would have thunk? So, yeah.
Where is home now? An airplane and somewhere?
I like to say home is where my heart is.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But I got two homes now. So I'm here and then Boston.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I was doing that traveling, and then I remember last day of School of Rock, I hadn't even taken my test yet, and I still think we have the best class of all time. But
That's what I heard.
yeah, saying, but anyways, so I remember I hadn't even taken my test yet, and I get a call from Jen Shaw, and I'd never spoken to her before, and she's like, hey, like super excited to have you on the team. And I'm like, so I'm on the team? Like, I'm confused. And then
Did I make it?
yeah, and she's like,
Make the
well,
cut.
she's like, I have a question. And I'm like, yeah, what's up? She's like, do you got a passport? And I'm like, yeah, I got a passport. Why? What's up? And she was like, I think I'm going to send you to Canada. And I was like, okay. And she's like, the lead actually can't go. He had a family issue, and there's a junior checker that's going to be out there, but I think
Oh,
you
this was
could.
in Toronto, right?
This was in Quebec.
Quebec.
Yeah, and I was
Okay.
like, I think I can. She's like, I think you could make it happen. So I flew back that Friday, and the only reason why I went home to Boston was one to get my passport, and then I had to go to my buddy's wedding on Sunday. But I remember I went to the wedding Sunday, and then Sunday night, right from the wedding, I drove all the way to Canada. I got to the border, and they wouldn't let me in, and I was like freaking out. They were
Oh,
like,
because you were there for work or something?
yeah, and they're like, you don't
Yeah.
have any work
So hard
papers
to get
or
into
whatever,
Canada.
and I was like freaking out.
Oh.
It's 4 o'clock in the morning,
Yeah.
and they were like laughing at me, not gonna let me out. So I called Nikki at the time, 'cause she's in California, like whatever, and she was with sales. So I was like, called her like several times. She answered, and I was like, hey, can you do me a huge favor? And she's like, what? I was like, you just send like a sales order from this job like to me right now. And so she did it, and they let me in, and I got there. And sure enough, I remember talking to Richard in the warehouse, and he was like, uh, he's like, so what are you looking forward to? I'm like, I'm just looking forward to do one. And he's like, I was like, I'm kind of like up in the air with it. And he's like, why? I was like, well, it's an eco press, bro. I haven't even touched an eco press. Like, I barely know how to build a regular press, never mind an eco press. And I was like, but I will say, I was like, I hope my first install is my hardest install. And sure enough, it was.
Yeah.
We got there, and the press had actually came like the turret had like of the heads had came 10 millimeters too high. So we had to do something where we had to release the collar on the press and drop it down. So like I was doing this crazy thing on the phone with like Buck. I remember like Buck was like, dude, I need you to just stay calm like you always do. He's like, I'm gonna send you a song, and I need you to listen to that song. Play it really loud. And I was like, okay. And the song was actually Feels Like Young Kobe. And like
Oh,
Kobe
really?
Bryant, yeah. And I was like, he would send this to me.
Back
But
to basketball.
yeah, so he sent me that, and
That's awesome.
yeah, I remember Portugal was sending us ideas and stuff, and they wanted us to basically make these like metal shafts. And Buck's like, well, he doesn't have metal, so we're gonna use PVC pipe. And I started like freaking out. I was like, Buck, like that's gonna work. And so I ended up, being resourceful, because I always say like a screen printer is really just an ultimate problem solver.
Totally is.
And I remember there was a machine shop across the street from the hotel. So I went to Home Depot with Abram, who I was with at the time, and I just asked them. I was like, "Can I use your machine shop?" And they were like, "What do you mean?" I was like, "I need to cut all this metal up." And they were like, "All right, like we'll make a deal with you." And I was like, "What's the deal?" They're like, "You can use the shop, right? But if anything happens, you have to run across the street and say you got hit by a car." It's like, sounds good, dude. So yeah, I remember we did that, and it was the first time I ever got to like talk to like Big Portilla and all that stuff, because I was on
The
FaceTime.
Portuguese team?
Yeah, I was on FaceTime with them while I had to do this, which was super like nerve wracking. They're all nice dressed and like looking at you, and then sure enough, like you have to like had to break this like big part, and we took like a clothing rack from inside the sales part to like put it onto the wrench just to be able to break torque, and yeah, sure enough, I smacked myself in the face in front of all of them, and I was like, oh, but I got it. So we ended up fixing the press. And
What did you do when you smacked yourself? Did you cut
well, I always have my hat. Like my hat has
Oh.
literally saved myself so many
like
times.
a helmet?
I should wear a helmet, but I mean, I think that would give people the wrong idea. So we're not gonna do that. But yeah, so I did that, and then sure enough, I finished that, and that was
Still the hardest install?
yeah, 2 days.
So it's cool because a lot of the rock installers, most of them are contractors. And
Yeah.
so when you do a rock install, you actually just send an invoice from Self-Made Designs.
Yeah.
And a lot of it gives you experience, because I always wondered that. I was like, why would a screen printer that has a screen printing business want to like install rocks on the side?
Yeah.
But a lot of our team started to become that, because instead of because I think Buck Primo and Mike Dolph were some of our first like full-time techs, and now they're leading the tech team and leading service in general over on the rock side. But our screen printers like Nathan Montillo and
Corey Haynes.
yeah, were
Singer Davidson, yeah.
all screen printers that had their own business. A lot of them had their own businesses that just wanted to come in. They had their own rocks. Like, cool, Richard was one. He's like,
Richard had a rock.
he had a rock. He literally bought it.
was
put it
never
together
calibrated, by
himself.
the way. That press was never calibrated.
No, I taught him how to calibrate that press. Taught him how to calibrate that press. I'm like,
The press
so
wasn't calibrated.
What
then.
you want to do is you need to make sure it's like one print head prints great, the next one doesn't. I'm like, have you ever leveled it? He's like, what's level? Like, Like,
No.
yeah, you got to level that thing. We learned that yesterday in the parking
Well,
lot.
that was the funny part about it was so I remember calling you and Richard. Richard answered. It was probably too late for you, and we had done exactly what happened during setup yesterday. So
Oh,
we put what ended up happening was we
on
lost
that eco.
no. On the press that I was contracted for to print on that rock press, like before all this, like
Oh,
I remember what happened
way long
way
time ago.
before. Yeah.
Yeah.
What happened was me and Cody like left the screen on the pallet and we put a head down and it pushed the
Oh, you
thing
push
down.
the pallet
And
down.
that happened
Yeah.
yesterday. That's why I was like, bro, I got this. So I've been here before. Like,
Is that what happened yesterday?
yeah, what happened was I was setting up the first screen and the bolts were already rough because like we built that press like so many times at this point. So they're very worn out. And me and Micah, who's an amazing printer, gonna be a legend. And we were flying through everything. I had the reg board going. I was like, bro, just let me lock this. Like I can fly through this. So we're locking, and he was trying to get the other screen in the next head, but I was just going so fast that he like tried to slide it through while I was putting the heads down, and it literally just pushed everything down. That's why I was like, when it happened, and you were like, oh, it's the ink. I was like, bro, it's not the ink. I know exactly what happened.
Oh, you didn't tell me that happened.
Yeah, well, we never got
So
to
the
talk. You were
first-
just talking trash the whole time.
The first time that ever happened, or I'm
Yeah.
sure it happened before that, I think the bolts used to be a little bit more robust in the arms, but also the arms were bigger. You know how the older rocks have the
these were the
bigger,
slim profile, which
stouter
yeah,
arms.
exactly.
So the first time that happened, what happened with the what do you call the part that goes from the print head to the lifting tower?
Lifting arm.
That lift, is it the lifting arm?
Yeah, yeah.
That whole thing buckled.
Oh wow.
And we were looking at it, and we're like, how is this possible? Like,
Yeah.
what would you run into it with a forklift or something like that?
Yeah.
And because that can happen. Like
Yeah.
now, a lot of times the arms just get pushed down, and you just have to re-level the arm. But it's much worse if that thing buckled.
so bad.
that print head would have been out of commission.
No, it would have been done.
Done.
But
I haven't seen that again since.
No.
So that's what happened yesterday.
Yeah, that's what happened.
Yeah.
But we
That's
fixed
why
it.
you missed your time.
I
Somebody put the wrong screen in the underbase.
Oh yeah, thank you, somebody. But
I
anyways,
didn't read highlight white. It's white.
Yeah.
Just throw it in there.
yeah, but I mean, going back to that, yeah, it was one of the things for me where I kind of had started to understand. Like I said, I'm a super big nerd, especially with something that I love. So like when I started studying the industry, like I really like sought out the people that I wanted to steal from. I read like this amazing book years back called Steal Like an Artist. So I understood that like, you know, part of changing the game is you have to study the game. You have to like give respect and to the people who changed the game in front of you, you know? So like at the time when I first starting the tech, and part of the reason why I wanted to do the tech stuff, because I was like, all right, I need to add this facet to my screen printing game to be like the legend that I want to be.
Yeah.
So like with it, I looked at it as like I had already studied you like crazy. I had already got really obsessed with Danny at the time because I was like, in my opinion, I was like, Danny's the best screen I've seen, you know. So I was already studying Danny, watching all his stuff. I had already watched all your stuff, and like I like looked at it like when I met Buck and all that stuff. I was like, all right, if I can add the teching to my arsenal too, like it will be on a whole nother level. So like for me, and like I think that's what separated me with a lot of those other guys. Like it was like I never wanted to give my stuff up. It was more so I knew I needed to add this to my facet to make me a better printer and a better artist. So and sure enough it did. And not only did it allow me to do that, but it allowed me to go into every shop I'd ever been obsessed with or watch. And then like it introduced me to all these people, and it also gave me the opportunity to be put on the spot, which I love. Like I've always loved the heat of the moment. So it was cool because you got all these people watching you, they got expectations. And then the other thing that I really took from it was I was one of the people that I tell now not to be scared of, but I was definitely one of the people that was too scared to pull the trigger and buy an auto. And I was killing myself manually, all that stuff. And I was just scared. I remember I had my first talk with Tala. She promised me she was gonna send me a rock T-shirt. I still never got that rock T-shirt. I have plenty now. I don't need it. But anyway, so
printed a few of them.
Yeah, exactly. And I was just scared to do it, and it was funny because like after going, I didn't get it. And
Well, that's okay. I always joke. Well, you finished your story.
I was just gonna say like I like in the first install I did, they had already had autos, so I never got that experience. But I remember doing my first like install where it was their first auto press, and then right after that I did my first home install. install. And it was like nuts because I got obviously the second one where I did their first auto was Doc, which is a legend. They were like, we're gonna give you the Doc, like we think he would be really good to help train you. So I did that, but I got to like experience that Christmas morning feel, and
Oh
like
yeah.
it was like the coolest thing in the world. And like on top of that, to be able to play a role where you can help them
Yeah.
get that feeling, but like with what I brought to the table with my knowledge of screen printing, it was like, oh, not only can I give them that Christmas morning feel where they're getting a new gift, I can like show them how to use it to grow their business or grow their life, you know?
Yep.
So I definitely got addicted to that. And
Yeah.
then once you start traveling and going to all these shops and meeting all the people, like I remember the big one was when I met Dom at Superior, and I was like,
Were you on his install of his
yeah,
oval? Or?
yeah, I was there, and I remember I flew in like a day later
The
than
thing's a
everyone.
beast.
Yeah, and the dryer's a beast too. And
Oh, yeah.
that was what me and Corey were working on. And at the time, like when I went to Dom's, I was already like coming into a groove where like people knew like I was doing things and stuff. So it was cool. And me and Corey had already met, like, so that was really cool. But it was funny because I remember when I finished the first one I was telling you about, the Canada one, Jen called me. She's like, you saved the day, like you're awesome. Buck called me too, said great job. And like she's like, is there anything I can do for you? And I was like, yeah, can I be on the Fort Worth trade show? And she's like, really? And I was like, yeah, I've never been to a trade show. Like I always wanted to go because going back to that interview with Adrian, she had asked me why I'd never been to a trade show. And
That's crazy. You had never been to a
never,
trade show. At
and
that
she
time.
was like, you've been
Wow.
doing this for this long, you've never been? And I was like, no, like I kind of look at it as like, if I go to a trade show, one, I want to have like some significance in it with like work. And then on top of that, like when I go, I want to make a splash. So I always keep going. And so sure enough, when I went to the Fort Worth one, you know, I came up with this idea where, well, how are they going to remember me? Oh, I'm just going to wear sunglasses all the time and see if that works. And sure enough, we're still wearing sunglasses. But yeah, so that like spiraled into effect where it's like I did that first trade show, and then I've done every trade show for the past 2 years, which has been insane. And then going into all those shops, like I said, going to Dom's was really big for me. Going to freaking Liquid Graphics was insane to see. Like
Did you do a job in there, or did you?
no, I got invited. Me and Richard got invited to go over there.
Oh, nice.
So
Yeah.
we just hung out over there and with the boss man himself, which
But you installed Lee's first press.
yeah,
Or his second press.
yeah, which was crazy because I remember how stressful
The
that
next press.
the next press,
Yeah.
the real deal press, the
The
one he
next
still
press.
has right now, you know. And I remember it was funny how it all worked out where, you know, I had done an install with Richard the week before, and he was like getting himself ready, trying to get his passport, all that stuff. And then I remember Jen put me on an install in Canada, and Jen calls me her plan B, like for everything. She's like, you're my plan B. Like, if shit hits the fan, I know you're my plan B. And I was like, cool. So I remember I had to go do an install in Nova Scotia, beautiful place. And there was a software thing that we had to update. And sure enough, Lee's Press ran into the same thing where they needed the software update. And if you remember, they were behind already from the shipping and stuff. So she was like, just go. And I was like, what do you mean? She was like, you've killed the training again with Abram. Like, you guys crushed it. Like,
So you were already in Canada?
Yeah. They were like, just go. And I was like, to Lee's? And I was like, yeah. And I was like, okay. I remember I went back to my hotel, called Cody. I was like, bro, guess where I'm going? And he's like, where? I'm going to Lee's house. And he's like, no way.
That's awesome.
And the cool thing was, I remember I was super excited. I was trying to calm down, and I was outside, like getting some fresh air that night. And these guys smoking cigarettes outside. And they were asking me, they're like, you know, what are you out here for? And stuff like that. And they were, I was telling them, I was like, I'm out here for screen printing. And one of them was actually a former screen printer. And it was, I texted you about this, and it was crazy because I'm in Canada, random place, hotel, and the guy's like, no way, man, I used to screen print. He goes, you ever seen those Ryan Moore videos? I'm like, what? Give me 1 second. And I pull out my phone, I scrolled back to when we were in Vegas, and I was like, you mean this guy right here? And he's like, holy crap, you know Ryan Moore? I was like, yeah, man. I was like, he's the
One
man.
out of every 1,000 people screen print, Zach.
Yeah,
Maybe 2,000 people.
Yeah, it's cool.
I think with DTF, it's gone down a little bit, sadly.
Yeah, but it's gonna come back.
It's coming back.
It's coming back.
Proof in the pudding yesterday.
Yeah, I was telling Brandon that. I was like, bro, this is the future right here. Like, more clothing brands, more artists are gonna understand that they have more growth trajectory if they work directly with specific shops, opposed to just going to shops where they're just another drop in the bucket.
it's cool to see, and it's cool to hear your story of how you like come full circle. I love a couple of things that I love about what you do is that 10,000 hour rule. Like you really like maybe that's back from the basketball
Yeah.
of like just shooting free throws all day long. You know,
Yeah.
it's like the different areas that you get to experience and you've put yourself into to learn the art of the craft of your art. You know, you're learning the craft of your art.
Yeah.
Is really impressive. And the fact that you do that, there's a really good quote that I always like to talk about. It's like one of my favorite quotes. So there's those who say yes and there's those who say no.
Mm-hmm.
Those who say yes are rewarded with the fun and adventure life gives them.
Yeah.
Those who say no are rewarded with the safety and security they retain.
Yeah.
So that's definitely one of your mottos, I'd say,
baby.
because you've been all over.
Yeah, and I think
like all over the world at this point. Too.
Yeah, it's been wild. I mean, even this year we just got back like a couple months ago from Honduras, which was nuts for me to even think about that. Because like I said, like what we were talking about last night in the warehouse, has happened so much over these past few years, where it's just like, you know, holy crap, I can't believe it. Like, it's the wild thing was that like the first real taste I got of it was at the Made Lab and stuff, and like I give Dylan and Andy so much credit for this because like
shirt show.
Yeah, I got interviewed on the shirt show, which was a huge accomplishment for me, and they released it literally the week before Water Base Camp, which
nice.
was like perfect because I didn't know anybody, and then I'm going to Water Base Camp and everybody knew who I was, and they're asking me questions. I'm like, this is wild, and like I didn't know that was going to be the remainder of everything, but yeah, just going through all that stuff. But like going off of what you just said with that quote, I think that's like a huge lesson that I've took is like just always be ready. Like, it's funny because like my schedule does change a lot, so it makes things very difficult to plan and stuff. But like I think that notion or that mentality where it's like, all right, I'm ready for whatever that is gonna get thrown on me has really helped me. I mean, like even with the 7:30 tour, like it was one of those things where I knew I was gonna be at certain parts of it, but you know, when you called me and like the circumstances weren't amazing, fortunately, shout out Miguel, I love you. And then, but it was one of those things.
It was a hard, like,
yeah.
The first dates were
tough.
But you know, one of the things I'll also say, if anyone wants to do anything, and this is something that I did in my career growing up, is like just putting yourself in your position to help for little or no money, you know, and just be like, hey, I'll take the scraps off the table if you know you'll let me come learn from you.
Yeah.
And that's so invaluable.
Yeah.
Because if you're there, you're gonna get called. If you're there, guess who are they gonna call off the bench?
Yeah.
If you're there, like being the towel boy, you know, or whatever. Not that you're the towel boy, but
no.
If you're the shirt puller and you're like, I'm ready, put me in, and that's exactly what you said with the rock team, you know, with the Made team.
Yeah.
And so excited to see where that takes you next, you know?
Yeah,
your goals.
It's huge. And like I said, I test that to my dad. That was something he put in my head, like, ready. He's like, there's no better, you know, reward than knowledge.
Yeah.
So if you ever have to work to gain knowledge, like that's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
Because
it's like most people pay to go to school for that.
Yeah, which is, like I say at all of our classes, the number one thing I wish I did earlier in my career was like actually just invest in myself, opposed to, you know, banging my head off a wall, as I like to say, or through a screen if we're at Lee's house and like try to figure it out myself. So, but yeah, no, it's been
those poor eco frames.
Yeah, I got a strong head, thick skull, baby. You know, right through.
There's one thing I can definitely beat you in. Is eco frame stretching.
I mean, I would hope so. Yeah. They're kind of like, you know, you deal with them a lot more than I do.
No, one thing you can teach me though, is how to flip a squeegee.
Oh, okay, yeah.
What did you say?
Huh? I said it. Thanks.
A lot of it. Maybe basketball, but no. So this is one thing you do in your video. Is like your videos is you're sitting there printing and then you do a flip. So show our audience the skill of flipping a squeegee.
Another basketball,
specifically how to do it with ink on it.
Yeah, another basketball thing, because my favorite player growing up was not Michael Jordan at the time. It was actually Allen Iverson. So he had all the tricks and stuff. So I really wanted to bring that in. But so I wanted to do something that separated me. So flipping, and pretty much I used to just practice, like trying to do it with no ink, you know, figuring it out, and then just getting comfortable to the flip, right? But the key is if you want to flip it with ink, because I love when people are in the comments like, there's no ink, and I'm like, do your history, buddy. I've been doing this for a while. It's all about the flood. So when you flood it, right, you really have to give it a hard like tilt. because then what that's gonna do is just like sheen the ink forward so it's not on the squeegee.
Got it.
And then you just gotta send it, man. Like you really can't think about it, you know. The more you think about it, the more likely you are to mess up, you know. And then this started from the can. Like people came up to me during the 730 store, and they were like, "Dude, you literally flip the can every time you spray the pallets or toss it behind your back without looking." And I'm like,
nice.
Yeah, it's just part of that basketball. I used to love going through my legs and stuff, like all that. But yeah.
Let me try. That's a talent. All right. You go with, well, you're ambidextrous. You both hands.
Go both.
But are you doing it from your dominant hand and catching with your not?
Oh, it doesn't matter. Usually I'll go right first and then catch with left. But yeah.
Oh,
that would have been a handful of ink.
Oh shit! I'm overspinning.
The other thing is,
there we go.
Till you get used to it, to get used to it, you just want to look at it. Like look at the flip, the way it flips.
I'm not even looking anymore.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
All right, we got ink.
So
where's the ink? Let's pass the ink on.
I was gonna do this at an All-Made event. I was printing. I was like, that would have been a disaster because I would have overspun it, gone in too heavy. But now you just like,
yeah. Well, now I think I gotta do it where there's been this guy on Instagram and he's been telling me he actually did a video of him flipping squeegee and tagged me a bunch in it, and he was like, "Dude, you need to start a flip challenge."
Oh,
so I think I need to start a flip challenge.
You should start a flip challenge.
Yeah, and online and just see if we can get more people
flipping. Can you do a double flip? That was a single.
The cool ones are doing it with one hand. Yeah.
We did in the zone. We did the rock flip.
The rock flip. I actually have a crazy video that Bronco did of me flipping one of these squeegees super high, and it turns into the rock squeegee, and I catch it and put it in a rock.
Yeah.
But no, I think the best flip I ever did though was the first time I was ever at Lee's house, and he was like, he saw me flipping one. He's like, "Oh yeah, I forgot you do the flip," and I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Well, can you flip one of my easy squeegees?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, man, I can definitely flip an easy."
Yeah,
and
you like double-handed it.
And I had tried so many times and failed, like, and Cody knows. And then sure enough, I was just like, "Yeah, I could do it, man. Like whatever." And like, so he pulls one off the rack, and I'm like, I turn around, I'm like, oh, "Shoot, what did I just get myself into?" I'm embarrassed myself in front of Lee. And then I like threw it up and I did it, and I was like, "Yeah, man, see, I got it. Like, told you I could do it." And then like he's like, "All right, do it again." So like there's a cool video of me just like walking across the shop, like flipping it and catching it. And then like ever since then I've been able to do the easy squeegee too.
That is harder because you got to grab the handles.
Oh yeah. Plus they have the things that stick out to lean.
Yeah.
So it's like you hit that and you're donezo. So
well, thanks for coming on today. Thanks for setting up a rock press in record time and tearing it down in record time yesterday at Ryonet. That was a really fun event.
No, it was a blast. And thank you, man. I appreciate everything you've done for me, all the opportunities you put me. I wouldn't be sitting in this chair if it wasn't for you.
Well, I hope our aspiring screen printer audience out there learns a lot from this episode and hits you up with questions because I know you'll answer them.
Oh, I definitely will. And I'm just getting started. I got a long road ahead of me.
All right, let's do a flip.
I'll flip it to you.
Yeah, okay, and I'll catch with my right hand.
Yeah, ready?
Oh shit! Now let's do that again.
All right. There you go. There you go. Nice. Good job, bro.